Hi, this is Opus Knight, and this is Night Vision. And this week, like I said, we have Paul Lima. How you doing today?
Doing fine, thank you. Yeah.
So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am 66 years old, and I have been a writer for 40 years.
Oh, bless
Mostly,
your heart.
yeah, well, mostly corporate work, and I was a freelance journalist for 15 years. Uh, Moved into books about 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I have self-published 20 plus books. Most of them are nonfiction, but I have two novels and a book of short stories. And the last two books I've written were the two novels.
Okay, and what were their names?
One is called Chronic.
Okay.
I have multiple sclerosis, and chronic is about four people, each with a different malady, who end up renting a flat together, and then life happens. Um, Maybe it's because I have MS. I don't think you see enough sick people in books, TV shows, movies who live normal lives. I think I look normal. I'm talking normal, but I have various MS symptoms.
Right.
And the other one is called Geri, and Geri is a post-pandemic LGBTQ plus novel. And
Interesting.
I have a little of that in my background. I have been straight the last 25 years. My brother and sister are both gay, and our child is non binary. So, taking all of that, I was able to look at the world from a different perspective. And it's about four friends who are living together, sort of forced to live together because of poverty. And it's going to sound like a cliche, but life happens and the various events that they get into. Mostly comical, but some I think are quite profound that can only be looked at from an LGBTQ perspective.
How broad an audience do you see?
I see chronic
Mhm.
uh, as being of interest to a lot of people who have illness,
Mhm.
but I believe healthy people can read it and learn.
Oh, of course.
Um, I've got some really strong reviews from my beta readers on it, some who were sick and some who were healthy. And then with Geri, I think if you have an open mind, you start to see the world as being more inclusive. And you start to see some of the things that straight white males, which I am now, some of the problems that we create and how it affects people of color, people with different sexual orientation. So I literally, for Geri, had to get out of my current head to look at the world through different eyes.
Now, do you feel it changed your perspective just personally writing it, or did you learn things from it that you didn't know about yourself?
I think it put into words my attitude and my outlook. So it really solidified my perspective. When you have a gay brother whom you love and a gay sister who you love and a daughter who you love, a child who you love who's non-binary, I still trip over the language on occasion. I'll call them she as opposed to they, but love Kaya is her name. You when you're surrounded by that and in your past have had some experiences off the straight and narrow sexuality spectrum, uh, you start to look at the world and you say, why do we think that these people are not people? The world looks at people who are of color, have different sexual orientations, who are female. Straight white men look at you with sort of like, a strange look. as if you're threats to us. I don't think you are.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to write from my feelings, but I couldn't write from my straight white male perspective. So I had to step back. With chronic, interestingly enough, because I am sick, there are four people, they're different maladies. I only have one of the four. So that book could be written from my perspective. As a writer, it's a challenge, though, to change your outlook, change your perspective, and to write from it.
It's definitely amazing to right now. I think that the world's went through so many changes,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
You know, the work that you're doing. I
Thank
mean,
you.
it's beautiful because love doesn't see any of color or sexual orientation, or everyone bleeds the same. Everyone has
Yeah.
the same wants, the same loves and
Yeah.
desires and needs. And I just think that is absolutely amazing.
Well, my next
Really
novel, sorry, my next novel is called Family Tree,
do.
and the protagonist, it's a historical drama, but it starts in the almost present day. It starts in 2012, and the protagonist is a black male. Now, you could say, what's a white male doing writing from the point of view of a black male? But we go through his entire history, 2,000 years, and he starts off as white. It starts off in Saxony, which is now Germany.
Mhm.
It ends up in San Francisco. And over time, his ancestors date different people. Like during the American Civil War, his great 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 grandfather, who was white, marries a black woman. And so the lines change. And I suspect most of us have different colors within us.
Mhm.
And in terms of sexuality, as far as I'm concerned, it's a spectrum. Yes, there are very straight people. Then there are straight people who have had different experiences, sexual experiences. And then there are very gay people. There are bisexual people. It's a spectrum. It's just people at this end of the spectrum often don't understand that, don't realize it. And the fact is, they're probably gayer than American $2 bills, but they're just so out of touch with that aspect of themselves. So, that's the book Geri is kind of like in your face,
Mm.
straight white people. It's in my face.
Well, you live it every day.
Well, with a gay brother, gay sister, and non-binary child, yes, it is part of my experience.
As you've grown older, like when you were younger, I don't know when you came
Yeah,
to terms with everything, or if
that's an interesting question, because if my brother were here,
Mhm.
he would be shaking his head and laughing because I outed him, or I forced him to out himself. But I was like 12 years old. You know, you're a kid.
Yeah.
My brother is queer. Oh my God. If you don't tell mom and dad, I'm going to. And he sort of hated me for it, but he thanked me for it because it gave him the motivation because he had to tell my folks. So yes, I have grown up and I have been uh, enlightened over time. Most definitely. You but there are people my age, somewhat younger, somewhat older,
Mhm.
who are, well, we saw them yesterday. They stormed the American Capitol. Yeah, there are people who are so set in their ways. You used a term and you modified it. You said, I don't think we need to say accept it. Yes, gay people don't have to be accepted.
No,
They are people. They don't need my freaking acceptance,
no.
But there are people who cannot accept them. And so my hope is, in a small way, Geri might enlighten some of those people.
I'm
And
sure.
yeah, and at the same time, my hope is that members of the LGBTQ plus community will find it a funny book with some serious overtones.
Yeah. And people there are a lot of people, especially young people, that their experiences in this world today are completely different than
Yeah,
what we had to deal with even 20-30 years ago.
yeah.
So I mean, congratulations. I mean, I think that's awesome. I
Thank you.
truly,
Yeah.
and
No,
I need to read it. Definitely.
I think there are younger people who are more open and more accepting. Having said that, when those younger people are older people, they will be living in the world and look around them, and guess what? They're going to see people who are narrow-minded and bigoted. So
From the beginning of time,
yeah, yeah,
you
you
know,
know,
you can only change who you are and your actions. That's the only thing you're responsible for.
yeah, yeah,
And everyone else, they're responsible for themselves, and they should have the right, the freedoms and everything to live how they choose, who
yeah,
they are, be who
yeah,
you are. I mean,
yeah. If you're a straight white male, I wouldn't sit back and say, you have to accept the gay community or the black community. But I would say you should not impede the gay community or people of color. Um, if you can't accept them, that's your problem, that's your
it's
issue.
your
But
problem.
don't get in their way. And
Exactly.
in Geri, there are straight white people who get in the way of these four friends. One is non-binary, two are gay, and one is transgender. Hasn't undergone the operation yet, but he's going to. And there are straight white people who get in their way, you know, and there are literally fights, literal fist fights over it. Um, because of it. No, I have had positive feedback from my beta readers on both books. They are self-published.
Mhm.
People say to me, why don't you go looking for a publisher? And I say, if a publisher was interested today, the book wouldn't be published for 2 or 3 years. They've got their lineup and that. I know how to self-publish my book. I know how to put it out there. I do some promotion. I sell some books. I'm not in it for, Harry Potter type sales.
Mhm.
I'm in it for to get some people reading. A few people reading makes me happy. You know,
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm impatient. I could not wait for a publisher to take 2, 3 years to publish the book. Yeah, I don't want to be dependent on anybody else. In fact, I have taught, having been a writer for
Mhm.
40 years. I'm also a teacher trainer.
Mhm.
And when I started teaching a business writing course, I looked at some of the textbooks, and either they were very expensive or they didn't cover what I wanted.
Mhm.
So I wrote my own textbook, Harness the Business Writing Process, and that's been used by several colleges and universities in continuing education departments. So
Mhm.
when I start teaching copywriting, because my background is in advertising copywriting, I wrote the textbook. And when I start teaching courses on freelance writing, I wrote the textbook. So I have literally sold 20,000 books. And you can say, hey, that's a lot of books. You're a bestseller. Well, I have 20 books, so it's really only a thousand of each. But some books have sold several thousand, so some books have sold only in the hundreds. Uh, but I'm a writer, and so I just have to sit in front of the keyboard and write. That's what I do. And
Yeah.
if I get some sales, then that's kind of like a
It's
bonus.
beautiful.
Yeah. I write. I
So
have to
I'm
write.
interested, as far as you said you did journalism.
Yeah, back about 20 years, 25 years ago, I was a freelance journalist for about 10, 12 years. I live in Toronto
Mhm.
and I wrote for the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, which is our national newspaper, the National Post, which is another national newspaper, and a whole lot of what are called trade magazines. Uh,
Now, have you
um,
seen the industry change
Yeah, that
over
industry
the years?
has changed quite dramatically. When I started to teach freelance writing workshops and courses, I would tell people, like if you can write and if you learn how to market yourself, you can make a living at this. I'm living proof. This is what I do. And today I would say, if you can write, if you can market yourself, you may be able to supplement your income with writing for newspapers and magazines. You know,
Now,
um,
you see yourself as a writer
yes,
more so
yes,
than the journalist, like
yeah,
that you enjoyed for its time, but then you, it's not, it pretty much it's whatever capacity you could write,
yeah, yeah.
you desire
Yeah,
doing.
I mean, I wanted to be a journalist and I
uh,
loved my time as a journalist,
right.
but it seemed to be like, okay, the time has run out, the clock has struck midnight, so moving on. Same as the book writing, like I wasn't writing books in my 20s or 30s, but when I hit 40, I thought, let me try it. So I like to write and I like to change up what I write about. Just like the novel writing, people are saying, Paul, you're writing novels? I mean, all your books are nonfiction. I said, yeah, but I had this idea for Geri and I had to do it.
Mhm.
And when I did that, I thought, okay, I'm writing that from a distance, plunging in to see how it feels and see if I can comment on the world from a perspective that is not mine.
Mhm.
Now I want to comment on the world from my perspective. So then I wrote Chronic. I yeah, I'm going to say this. I do have a book out. I can't tell you the title of it because if
Mhm.
I told you, I'd have to kill you. Sorry about that, because it's written
Thank
under a
you.
pseudonym. Yeah, it's written under a pseudonym. It's just a terrible, horrible book in terms of what happens, but it's based on stuff from my youth.
Gotcha.
I just couldn't put my name to it. So I've actually written 3 novels
Mhm.
and a collection of short stories. But I have to experiment with different things. I blog, you know, and then I learned how to create videos. So I vlog or video blog.
Mhm.
It's kind of like you can call me a writer, but I think in many ways I'm a communicator. It's like, yes, I write, but I also teach, and teaching is simply communicating, and doing video blogs is communicating.
Yeah.
But, before you teach, you write an outline of what you're going to talk about. And before you do a video blog, you create, at least I do, create an outline of what I'm going to be talking about. So writing is part and parcel of the communication process.
Now, I'm what they consider a pantser, where I I sit down and things just they evolve. A
Okay,
story will evolve.
right.
And I wanted to find out, do you outline, do you already have like a preconceived notion of what your work is going to come out to?
Okay, 2 answers to that.
Okay.
For my nonfiction, I do detailed outlines before I write because when you are producing a nonfiction book, you know what you're writing about, you know where it starts, you know where it ends, and you have to know all the topics that you need to address. And in fact, I break my major topics into subtopics. So
Okay.
my major topics are chapters, and my subtopics are the outline of the chapter. For fiction, so this is answer number 2, I do what I would call a general outline, I need to know who my characters are. I need to know where they're coming from, what motivates them, and some of the things that they're going to trip over, some of the events they're going to get into. So I don't have for fiction, I don't have a point by point outline, but I have a big picture outline. And then I write and I will let the story take me places. Like in Chronic, I had something happening to a character and I got to the end of the book and I thought, what happened to that character can't happen to him there where it was happening to him in the outline. I have to move that to the end of the book and it becomes an epilogue. And it made so much more sense. So I have in fiction an outline, but I'm open to letting the story manipulate or move the outline around in ways that makes the story stronger. In my nonfiction books, there's almost like no reason to deviate from the outline. I have most of my books of nonfiction are on writing, be it business writing, copywriting, promotional writing, writing for the web. But I also have written a book on multiple sclerosis, everything you need to know about MS. And even for that book, I had a detailed outline because if I want to convey what my disease is all about and what some of the potential, what some of the meds are and some of the ways to try to live with it and treat it and stuff, I need to know point by point what I'm going to address. And in fact, once I get the outline done for nonfiction, I work on it, move it around and make sure, okay, now it is flowing logically, it is structured logically. So when I begin to write, I've got this outline. The line I use is, it's all over but the writing, because I have a detailed outline. All the points are in logical order. So I just have to write from point to point to point. And so that I feel makes me a more efficient writer and a more effective writer. Now, I'm not saying everybody should do what I do.
Right.
That's what works for me, though.
Yeah. No, with myself, it could be a simple word or some place that I'm at, or, I am always writing. When someone asks, that's precisely what I say. I'm always writing.
Always
I could
writing.
write about literally anything.
Yeah.
At any time, I'm just like, write this down. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do a fair amount of social media.
I was
And
going to ask
social
you about
media,
that.
yeah, that social media is writing,
Yeah.
Now, before I do a social media post, I don't outline it, but I do sit back and I think about, what do I want to say? Why do I want to say it? What impression am I trying to make? So I think before I write, and all doing an outline is thinking hard and long before you write, so you have everything in order, for nonfiction. For my fiction book, there were some things in my outline that as I was writing, I thought, you know what? Having that in the outline has helped me develop the character, but I don't need that to happen to him because the character became full and rich without that happening. So the character is fully developed. Interesting things have happened.
Mhm.
So these 5 things have happened. I don't need point 6 and 7 to occur. We've got this character as rich as he or she should be. So again, in fiction, I'm more willing to suspend elements of my outline or move elements around. Nonfiction, once the outline is complete, and it's very detailed, very logical, very structured, seldom will I move a point around or move, never will I move a chapter around.
Now, do you have a favorite author yourself?
I am an eclectic reader.
Mhm.
I read a lot of stuff. And to the authors out there, if I've read your book, I'm sorry I forget your name. It's kind of like I don't remember everybody that I've read. I remember the books. I remember what they were about. There are a couple of books. They're written by Vietnamese people that I absolutely loved. And my wife's into book clubs. I recommended them both to the book clubs, and they really liked them. So I remember the books I've read. I just don't always remember the author's name.
And see, I think that happens a lot. I remember, I'm horrible with names anyway.
Yeah.
That's been throughout my life.
Yeah.
So, when I read something and I really, really enjoy it, I have to kind of pin a note or make a notation about who wrote it.
Yeah.
I won't remember 6 months later, but I'll remember that story and every detail in it.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
I use an e-reader. I use the EPUB app on my tablet to read. And so all the books I have are saved on my computer and on my tablet. Billy Crystal, nonfiction. He wrote a book. It's sort of it's almost like an autobiography, but it is hilarious. I am sure he is exaggerating and lying even in it, but it is so funny. See, under best books, I have crime, dogs, drama, funny, nonfiction, science fiction, all under best books. So let's look at, okay, Gone Girl, Gillian Flynn. I loved that book. That to me was a fantastic book, and she wrote the screenplay for the movie, and the movie worked well. We have a dog, a giant schnauzer, and The Art of Racing in the Rain. I don't remember the author's name, but to me was a fantastic book told from the point of view of a dog. Let's see. Okay. Here's an author. His name is Wallace Stegner. I had never heard of him. Tripped across a book called Crossing to Safety. Oh my God, I loved that book. He was writing in, I believe, the 30s. But my God, so Crossing to Safety. And then he's somebody I said, I have to find out what else he's written. And he wrote Big Rock Candy Mountain and Angel of Repose. So I've read 3 or 4 books by him. So those are just some of the books that I have really enjoyed.
Well, you have been a delight, and I am so grateful for your time.
Well, thank you for the interview. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
You have a beautiful night, and thank you again so much.
Okay, take care.
Alrighty.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.